Okay, I'm gonna be honest, this is not the worst place in the world to need to make a film. I mean, just check out this view. Is that not absolutely incredible? But you wanna know one of the biggest reasons I get the opportunities to come to places like the Maldives and film for brands like Four Seasons? It's because I can create great visuals without needing a large crew and tons of gear. It's not easy when you don't have all of your people and your lenses and your lights and your cameras and all of that stuff that we love, but it is possible. And today I want to walk you through 2 mindset hacks that I use on each and every shoot I go on that help me to create consistently strong visuals and get me opportunities like this. Before we dive in, let me just share a little bit of context. Okay, so I've got no crew here, and I've got just 3 check bags. Come on, let me show you. Now, up first is this lovely 10-bar roller bag, and it has got the red Monstro inside of it. Now, I normally have the 50mm Cinema Prime on there. It's got the 35 because it's finished shooting. Then the Polar Pro matte box with these variable NDs, which are amazing at quickly dialing in the light. And then around that would just be all of the different batteries. Up next is this other timber case here, which would have the FX3 if I wasn't filming with it right now. The 16-35 I've got on here. That is my second of 3 lenses. Here is the 50mm Supreme Prime plus 35 on there, makes 3. And I've got this handy Sony E2PL mount adapter, which allows me to put these little, these big lenses on this little body right here, giving me more versatility. Extra cards, media, stuff like that in here. And then the biggest bag of them all, and this one here has got my audio. The sound device is Mix Pre 3. Got a boom pole. I've got the DJI RS2. I've got the Mavic Pro drone underneath. I got one light. That is the Westcott 2x1 flex light. And then some other little odds and ends. Now, I know some of you might react to the red Monstro and the Supreme Prime and think, yeah, it's easy to get solid visuals when you've got a $60,000 camera and lens. And while it is easier, it's far from enough. And what I think is really cool is that I'm also here filming with a Mavic and a GoPro and a Sony FX3. And with the ideas that I'm going to show you here today, it'll allow you to take those cameras and create footage that could be cut seamlessly with a $50,000, $60,000 rig. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty rad. So let's dive in. Now, to create high-end visuals, you need 4 main things, and you need to think about them in this order: light, art, people, and structure. Now, the light creates shape and depth. The art is all of the elements within your frame. The people offer you emotion, and the structure then brings all of these elements together into a pleasing composition. So let's look at each one of these, and I'll show you examples of what I'm creating here in the Maldives. Now, for light, great visuals need more than just the absence of bad or harsh light. They actually need the presence of good light. Now, the golden rule I like to think of is to let the light lead. I mean, without much crew and a ton of gear, you can't just impose yourself on the situation and do whatever you want. Instead, you need to find the right light at the right time and then look at how you can gently modify it. Now, this is going way beyond just golden hour, because most of us need to film for more than just 1 or 2 hours a day. So I'm at the Ayurvedic Wellness Center, which in most hotels would just be thought of as a spa, but here they practice Ayurveda, which means knowledge of life. And it's actually said to be one of the oldest and most comprehensive medical systems in the world. But what that means for me and this story that I'm filming is that the treatments are more than just your traditional massage. They have some really interesting practices here. Now, in figuring out what I'm going to film, the key is to really look at the light. As you can kind of see around me, there's just tons of tree coverage. And so what I've got to try and do is find the treatment room that allows a little bit of natural light to come in. And then ideally find a treatment room that has natural light actually fall on where the treatment's happening. All of this is open air. And so everything I'm going to need to do is going to be from the sun, but can I find a room where the sun actually comes into the space itself? So here's one of the treatment rooms. Now, as you can see, it's completely in the shade, which is going to make it very hard to balance the the background and everything else without it blowing out. I'm going to use my Lumos app here to overlay the sun on what I'm filming. And so this will show me where the sun will be at any given time. Now what you notice is that the sun comes up over those trees at roughly 8 a.m. And if we come back here, there will be a short period where it actually comes right into the treatment center, right? And it happens for about 20 minutes. From about 8 to 8:20, it will breach the top of the trees and it'll come inside onto the bed. And so that's going to be my window. I'll plan to be here early, have everything set up, and then as that sun comes over, I'll get this nice morning light that will kind of fill up the room. Now that's important because it's going to give me more shape and depth, but also it's going to let me, since I'm in the shade, it's going to let me balance the background so now everything's not blown out. Now, with the 4-in-1 reflector, what I'll be able to do is if I want to get a really nice soft tight, when soft light makes a lot of sense for, you know, the experience of a massage, is that I'll just have somebody hold the reflector, the diffusion portion, right outside of my shot. And I can just move, and they'll move, and I'll be able to get some really nice angles that way. Now, as I go past my 20-minute window, if I still want to film and the sun comes up, then what I'll do is use the silver side, or the warm white, which is a blend of silver and gold, and I'll actually just slice that down and bounce it right back in. Now, for cameras here, I'm going to mostly use the Red Monstro handheld at anywhere from 60 to 96 frames, going more on the slow motion to really make it feel smooth, because it's a spa experience, very slow and mindful. I'm not going to use the gimbal, I'm not going to have any big crazy moves because I want this to be very slow and precise, right? Nothing jarring, nothing big. I'll use my body to kind of just rock. There we go, DJI rocking with me. Rock back and forth to just give it a subtle motion. Now, a big tip with light is to always break down your scene into no zones and go zones, where you can be and where you can't be based on the light. Now, if you shoot with the light, you're going to have no shape. So that's going to be a no zone. But if you shoot off axis of the light, you're going to get some shape, and you're also more likely to get a balanced background. So that's going to be a go zone. So I'm going to be filming sunrise yoga. Let's look at that and break it down into our no zones and go zones as an example. I've got a lovely scouting photo, and this is exactly where we're going to be filming sunrise yoga. So let me scroll through and show you how I mark this up into our no zones and our go zones. So what you see here is the sun coming in the side, right? You've got the sun right here. And here's where our talent is going to be at the end of the dock. Now, if I film with the light, that's going to give me no shape at all. And so that's going to be a no zone. And if I film directly back into the light, I mean, that's going to be hard to get a balanced exposure. It might work for a silhouette, but it's not something I'm going to want to be there often. So I'm going to mark that as a no zone as well. Now I could film this way off the side of the light, or I could film back this way. Those both become go zones. Let me show you no zones and go zones live. Right now, I am in a go zone. You can see that there's light and shadow on my face. There's some definition. Right now, as I come this way, I'm entering a no zone. The sun is directly behind the camera and we lose all that shape, right? It's very flat. It's also incredibly hard to look at. As we come back over here, we get back into a go zone. The shape returns to my face. You can see that there's more definition. But notice the background here is pretty dead because there's no sun falling on it. So compare this go zone to this go zone. That one looks way better because the light's also on the background. So this will be our primary location, primary go zone. No zone facing the sun, back to a secondary go zone, not as nice, and then the back is going to be also a no zone, looking at that silhouette. You can get a creative shot, but you don't want to live here. This right here is our go zone, where we're going to live because of that shape and because of that nice balanced light. Now, for this scene, I'm going to use both the gimbal and the Red Monstro. I'm going to use the gimbal to get some subtle little dolly shots, the wide shots, bringing us into the scene. And then I'll use the Monstro to get in tight and get our close-ups and to get some really interesting compositions. Now as I get close, I can again use that diffusion to soften the light, and as I shoot wider, we'll pull the diffusion out and we can use the sunrise light as is. Okay, so the critical thing with the light here is to listen, to be intentional, to know where it is and to plan it out, so you only need to gently modify the light to get a great look. And remember, to make high-end visuals, you want to balance your light, avoiding having anything blown out, as that's going to feel way less intentional and way more amateur or raw. Okay, so as we move into art, now this is something that I didn't used to pay attention to. I mean, I assumed it was somebody else's problem, whether that be the client or the talent. Now, as I've gained experience, I've started to realize that I'm the one that's going to be ultimately responsible for the visuals I create. And so we work really hard to consider what people are wearing and what's in the background and think through the colors and patterns and how everything in a frame fits together. I try and break down the scene into two main components: the foreground, which is often going to be the talent or people, and that's going to be what they're wearing and how they're styled, and then the background, which is where you're filming into and what elements you're going to find there. So we're at the Marine Discovery Center and we're going to be filming coral restoration. Now the challenge is, you can see where the frame is set up over my shoulder here. It's just against this blue wall and it really isn't all that flattering in terms of art and background. So what we want to do is look around and try and find something that might be a little bit more relevant and look better. And so all around here, it's just largely signage and it's really not going to look good. But when I walk back to the turtle rehabilitation tanks right back here, what you'll notice is in between, there's this really nice big patch of green that we could film. And so by moving everything down here and using that as our background, all of a sudden it's going to look way better. Now, if you notice the light here is just a tad harsh, hold on, we'll come to that later. Or for this interview, there was a desk in the corner and nothing on the wall. But by pulling that desk out, bringing in a plant instead, adding in a magazine rack, the background all of a sudden has so much more life. The key here is to decide where things happen. Now, let the light guide you so that you have options, and then choose a setting that allows for a nice background. Try to take a moment to really add or remove elements to improve the look of your frame. Okay, so number 3 is people, and this is whomever is in your film. At Muse, we most often work with real people versus actors, which is a totally different skill set. And the number one killer of your visuals is when the people look flat, lifeless, or artificial. To get real people to come to life in front of your lens, try these two things. First, be a friend, not a filmmaker. I mean, take a moment to actually talk to them about things outside of the production. As you film, chat with them, have fun, keep it light, and don't make it about the gear and all of the technical stuff. And the second one is try and give experiences, not directions. Now, we've got a whole tutorial on how to get emotional B-roll with real people, so I'm not going to reteach all of that here, but let me show you one quick example from this production. I was filming with Holly and Hamish, and they were a real couple, and I was at the Sunset Lounge. Now, I could have just said, okay, now laugh for me, but I think we all know how that would have been awkward. They're not actors. So instead, I asked her to think of a moment when she really felt how much she loved him. And when she had that moment in mind, I said, whisper it into his ear. The takeaway here is that I created real experiences, and then I documented real emotion that came out of those. And if you want more ideas on how to do this, check out the full tutorial we made in Hawaii right here. Okay, hopefully by now, as we've talked about light, art, and people, you're starting to realize that these ideas are going to stack on each other, meaning you first listen to the light and you find the right place and directions that you can film. Then you think through your art, right? Your foreground and your background. And then you need to create an experience where your talent can come to life and give you real emotion. And that's going to massively elevate your visuals. And that's going to really bring us to our last part, which is structure. How we build our frame with all of these things in mind. How you structure or build your frame that starts with the light. It considers the art, and then it waits for the peak moment with the people and composes all of that into one frame in a really strong way. So the last part of that is composition within the constraints of light, art, and people. We want to create high-end visuals. Your composition can't be basic. I mean, by that, I mean it can't just be a simple, safe center frame shot without any thought about how the layers interact. So a few tips to help you elevate your compositions. First, symmetry is a great way to create striking compositions. It's going to create a sense of harmony and balance, which is instantly pleasing. Adding foreground can be a great way to give your image depth. Now that could be some bush or trees, or you can get creative and hold an object in front of your lens. Of course, the rule of thirds is important to have in the back of your mind, but try to avoid being too formulaic. Look to give your compositions room to breathe. Try putting your people or action at the bottom third, leaving a great deal of headroom and space, giving the sense of a big open space. Look for unique perspectives. Rather than just standing and filming everything from eye level, consider going lower or higher, going inside things, other ways that you can really look at your frame differently. Okay, so bringing it all together, the real trick here is that you always need 4 out of 4 to get high-end visuals. Most people walk in and they can get 1 or 2, but to really have your frame stand out, you've got to work through the lighting, art, people, and structure, and ensure each is solid. And as I hope I'm showing you, you can do all of this with little crew and gear. You can think of this as doing laps, because you need to keep going through the light, art, people, and structure with each scene you do. And when you keep doing laps, you're gonna keep getting great visuals. Now, doing laps with no crew and little gear, you're gonna find that you often run into problems, as you don't have what you'd like in order to achieve your shot. So that brings us to the second mindset hack. And it's a concept I learned way back in my university days when I was a psych major. And the concept is called functional fixedness. And it sounds really fancy, but it's actually really quite simple when you break it down. Functional fixedness is how much you get stuck or fixed on the common function of something. For some of us, we could look at this water bottle here and we would just see it as it is. But for those of us who are low on functional fixedness, we would look at this and we would see so many other things. We would see something that could be filled with sand and used as a sandbag, or something that could be emptied and put in front of your lens to create interesting refraction in foreground. The point is, when you develop the ability to see things beyond their common function, realize that everything around you could be an element to help you tell your story. For example, we know that Four Seasons is legendary for the quality of their beds. Well, it turns out their sheets are pretty darn awesome too. So when filming the coral frames, I found a better location for the art, but it meant that the light was really poor and directly overhead. So I asked if they had an extra king-size bedsheet I could use, providing this gorgeous, soft overhead light. We're always looking at the best way to solve the problem, and many of us confuse the problem with the goal. I only have 2 light stands here with me right now, and I needed 3 for the interview. That was a real problem that I had to figure out while I was here. Well, if I focus on the problem, I'll be searching on the remote island forever for another light stand. But when I look at the goal, which is actually just to hold my key light up, all of a sudden, there's so many other ways to solve it. I actually ended up using a bedside lamp, which, well, it wasn't pretty, it totally worked. Now, choosing tools that are versatile is also going to help you overcome problems and get more done. I mean, I choose this 4-in-1 reflector so I can get silver, gold, diffusion, bounce, into solid black. And I always bring gaff tape, spring clamps, and multi-tools, because those can help you solve anything. Now, I'm not suggesting this is easy. I mean, I work my ass off to get great visuals and to ensure that I'm outthinking the problem each time. If you hold yourself accountable to the standard of needing 4 out of 4 in your laps to roll, it changes how you see and prepare for a scene. When you run into trouble, be sure you're not getting too fixed on what something should do, and instead get clear on the goal and look for creative ways to get it done. Heck, I even gave talent the shirt off my back and my sunglasses when that's what was needed to get my laps in.